friend just messaged in a group that I'm in about how she'd had a very strange, profound night, kind of losing her identity. And at the same time that she'd sent this message, another friend had messaged saying that she was doing her absolute best to hold on to what she knew of herself, because she thought that was the only way she could move forward. And then in the text chat, somebody responded to say, yes, what you're going through is very real, and I've experienced it too. And I think we need more information. We need more information about this. We need a greater understanding of personal identity, and what it means for it to be dissolved, for it to feel unreal, for these realizations that identity is itself a construct. We know we live in a construct. When I say we, I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm probably speaking for 20% of the population. 80% of the population aren't ready to hear this. But even that is a construct. Even that can be a belief. There is a real awakening, not awakening to a systemic issue, not awakening to systemic control and hidden things with, billionaires across the sea, underwater habitats, tunnels that spread from London to Jerusalem, for instance. It's not an awakening about that. It's an awakening to the greater true sense of self, which is one that is unlimited, one that can't be described. It's an unfathomable mystery. The personal identity is a story. Saying that the personal identity is a story is also a story. There's nothing I can say about reality that isn't a story. It's not like it's an anecdote. It's a lived experience. But the only way that it can be expressed is to describe it. It's not real. It's made of reality. The words, the thoughts, the personality, the identity, it's all made of reality. But it isn't itself real. And that paradox shouldn't be feared. That is the mystery. Reality expresses itself as Paul. Reality expresses itself as the rosemary tree growing in my garden. Reality expresses itself as confusion, loss, grief, anger, repression. It expresses itself as love and as joy, as intimacy, as isolation, as acceptance, as violation. It expresses itself in infinite ways. So the expression of life and reality as Paul is infinity. This is infinity speaking, moving, breathing. And yet those are words. Those are a description of something that can't be described. Losing the sense of holding on to that identity. That is dying before you die. Death is the end of attachment to thought. And when that comes, there's a release of that thinking, seeking energy back into the expression itself. And then that energy comes back out and just flows. And the personal energy, within the personal energy, it hits, it stays, and it's held onto. and it winds and compresses the body. Everything's learned and conditioned patterns. When I walk barefoot down my stony gravel garden path, there's a conditioned aspect of trying to be careful where I step so that I don't step on something hard, sharp, and damaging. And then there's a real experience of feedback, which is as the foot strikes the ground, there is no fear because I'm manifesting the foot and the ground at the same time. And when I say I'm saying infinity, reality is expressing through and as Paul the rest of the world, as it is doing for anybody watching. My feet hit the ground. That's a description. It's just infinity expressing itself as ground and feet. And if there's no fear involved, then the pressure of foot and of, I don't know, 75, 80 kilos on the ground is spread throughout. The fascia holds it, and it like a shockwave, like a ripple in the water. It spreads out through everything, so it can be felt. It's felt here, of course. It's felt there. It's not just nerve receptors. It's not a nerve pathway sending electrical signals. It's a dielectric field. The fascia itself is a ubiquitous, intelligent interface between the field that we believe is external and the field we create for Paul to have an experience of the world. So fascia is made real by the conversation and by the experience of it, just as reality is fascia in its dynamic, flowing, fluid expression. It doesn't break. It's designed to flow. You could say that it's the biggest and most obvious interface from the metaphysical to the physical. So realized intelligent beings will tell you that there is no reality, that you could say it's energy. All these things are completely appropriate. But we're in a period where that information needs to be held and embodied in some way. So the experience, that is the experience, so that when I walk and my heels touch the ground, I feel as if the skeleton and the muscles are floating inside this field of energy, which feels like fluid dynamics, but it's energy. So occasionally that is the case. Footsteps are felt inside the inner ear as a sound, even if I'm tiptoeing, because it's the mechanisms of the fascia and the body, the internal mechanisms that's being heard inside, not an external noise of any sort. Excuse me. We identify with everything that's happening, and that's humanity, that's human, that is the human role, to identify. We identify with the ground as being sharp or soft, wet or cold. We have 200,000 nerve receptors in the feet. They are sensing weight, they are sensing mineral constitution of the earth, they are sensing the heat. Not censoring, sensing. The mind senses, the body senses. I should put that on a t-shirt. The mind sensors, the body senses. Yeah. And then what is the background of experience isn't the background. It's everything. This infinite, or this expression of infinity called Paul, appears as the foreground. It appears as the individual expression in a human being in a world of objects with other human beings. But that's just as it appears. You're seeing this on a screen, and yet I appear to be real. You look beyond the screen and you have another image, which is itself being portrayed through a screen of reality. It appears to be 3D. It appears to be 4D. For some people, it appears to be even more dimensions than that. So there's nothing I can say that can make sense of anything that I'm saying. Reality is reality. Giving it a name doesn't make it any less real unless you believe in the name. So infinity being expressed as Paul is no less meaningful. But if I believe that I'm just Paul, that I'm not infinity, that I'm not a loving, eternal, infinite intelligence expressing itself for the joy of being me, then I limit my experience to some attempt at scientifically classifying the experiences as this, that, the other, and not that, and then comparing those to other people. And we live in the philosophical age where comparative reasoning is apparently all there is. You define yourself and your being and your worth and your value by comparing yourself to somebody else. And because most of that is done on social media, most of it is untrue, most of it is inauthentic, then the human, Paul, will suffer at that. But only if I believe in those meanings. If I recognize that this authenticity is intelligent, loving, infinite expressions of one consciousness, then the inauthentic approach is just as authentic because it's one intelligence doing it. Not all coffee tastes like coffee. There's nothing to be afraid of in life, and yet the body will react through natural mechanisms when something dangerous happens to it. That's not fear. Fear is a response to an appropriate stimuli. It's psychological fear, or the psychological conditioning that fear means something. That's when it gets held onto. That's when it becomes part of the living matrix, which is the personal identity of the individual. I was hurt as a boy because I was hurt as a boy, because my love was rejected. My shoulders came forward, my back hunched, my rib cage collapsed in, and I protected my heart. And then there's all kinds of systemic effects of that damage. My neck pulls forward more here, so my head does this. My hips are misaligned because my shoulders damaged from hod carrying and lifting, heavy weights on building sites as a 12, 13 and 14-year-old. And then 20 years in the military. All of this designed to create a body of a certain shape and size, which is being held by the fascia. And it's being created by the fascia through those traumatic events. It's just the conduit. It's the easy way to see it. It's the mechanism, the interface, it's the media through which, by which, and as which the infinite loving intelligence that is eternal expresses itself in this plane of inertia. At this point where light has slowed so much that it appears to be physical. Outside of this physical realm, in the dream world, it's no less different. In a dream the other week, I became lucid, I spoke to somebody, we had eye contact, hadn't really had that before in a lucid dream, and then all of a sudden I didn't know whether that was my reality or not. So in that reality, fully identified as a body in a world, I then thought I was living there. So then I got a little bit like confused. Well, where are my family? Where are my girls? Blah, 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 blah. And then I woke up in this body realizing that that was equally as much a dream as this body is. And I am the space within which both appear. And the experience of both, whether that's personal or impersonal, it appears within me. Sleeping appears within me. Deep sleep appears within me. I am this moment now, and this present, this here, this location, if we want to call it that. That's what I am. And there's an expressing of this mind, body, soul, spirit complex, whatever you want to call it, that appears in this me. And yet, that's a story. We need to be more cognizant of these realities. We need to be more accepting of the reality that a personal identity is a story. If I pick up a book and read something from that book, I don't believe it to be real. I can engage with it in my imagination as if it's real, so that I can have that real experience to really get involved. But then I put the book down. The book will have effect on me. The words I've read, the emotions I feel, it will change me. There will be micro changes within the fascia, which is the identity, which is the living experience of Paul in the world. But the story of Paul that is written in the fascia of this body, that was held onto, resisted, believed in, until it was no longer. Until that resistance unwound. Like a vortex just disappearing into the rest of myself. We cannot ignore the physicality of this experience until we can. What do I know? The experience here is that I cannot ignore this physical projection. But I also don't have to believe that it's completely real. Not having a personal identity does not mean that you don't have personal experience. It's not that duality doesn't exist, it's that reality is known to not be separate. And we need to be more accepting of the reality that some people experience life raw without personal identity. We need to accept this. We need to normalize it. We want conversations that bridge metaphysics and physics so that really clever people can show us how to live without the conditioning and the programming being the central energy stream of that being. Because once it's unwound, that energy that was keeping it in is free. It's free to be what it already is. That's the freedom. Knowing that life doesn't end with this body. It doesn't end with personality. It doesn't end at my characteristics. I am free to experience the limitations of a body in a world which appears to be 3D. And with the limitations, I'm not a brain surgeon. There are plenty of brain surgeons. I'm not expressing myself as a brain surgeon. I'm expressing myself as this somewhat guide between the metaphysics and the physical world, as a bridge, as a voice to give reason beyond what can be seen, beyond what can be sensed. So I'm not here to censor reality. I'm here to sense it and speak it. And that means that part of what I do is help others as well. Because there's a compassion that is revealed after this resistance dies. There's a compassion that is not conceptual. There's a compassion for this story first, which is the shock. Because until it's seen, you don't realize how much you don't value yourself. You don't realize how much you don't give meaning to the story you've had. You can value that story. You can recognize the worth in it without having to believe that you are it. That isn't a doing, that's an undoing. And it's not something you can undo. It is an undoing. My firm belief is that with the program of fascia work that I'm doing, with the unwinding, that does bridge the gap between what can be spiritually understood, spiritually recognized, spiritually realized, but the unwinding of the body and the mechanisms and the conditioning and the programming, the meaning, the hurt, the pain, the love, the joy, all of it, that takes time. And that's where the paradox of reality can bite and slow people and stop people, because then, and I did it too, time doesn't exist, space doesn't exist, therefore. But we don't live in that reality. You can take some mushrooms, you can do ayahuasca, you can take some acid, and you can have an experience of that reality. You can have it soberly, as my friends do and have. When I look, when I feel, when I sense my experience, there is no separation in it. The distance between this and that is just the movement on the screen. There's no difference. What is the difference between a thought and not a thought? There isn't a difference there. And there's a freedom in that, which is experienced as joy. It's experienced as emptiness, a vastness. Not an emptiness or a vastness that the mind can conceptualize in any way, shape, or form, but it still tries. It's not a phenomena. It's not objective. There's no subject in it. It's just what it is. indescribable, naturally occurring, organically always already this, without interruption, without beginning or end, without purpose or meaning. And the freedom from the weight of the knowledge of wanting or seeking to know what it is so that you can become it is gone, and when it goes, it's just this. An open receptivity to experience whatever can be experienced for the purpose of being a Paul in this world. It can appear personal and impersonal both at the same time. It just doesn't matter. It's not important. The belief in what it is, it's not important. Whether you believe in me, it's not important. Whether I believe in me, it's not important. It just, the focus of life is not about meaning. It's about feeling. And because it's about feeling, and because the effort goes into feeling, it does it on its own. It's freedom. The liberation is in knowing that the resistance is leaving. So that the experience of the body is different. It's lighter. Freer, more fluid, flowing, mobile, accepting, loving, compassionate, giving, caring. And yet, this morning I was frustrated over something, and there was anger, and it was quick, and it was fast, and it was raw. And I laughed afterwards, and I'd lost something, and I went to 3-4 places where I thought it was. And then it was just like, fine. And as soon as I went, fine, I was reminded exactly where the thing was that I'd lost. Don't grieve the personal identity. You risk creating another personal identity that grieves the personal identity. Allow the emotion to be what it is, as it is, just energy in motion. It's just a flow. Anger is just a name we give to a more chaotic energy signature. Life without language, an existence with just feeling. Move, you exist. You flow. That is the Tao. And when things slow down, stiffen, or dehydrate, you're dying. And that will happen. This body will die. And I will experience, and am experiencing, that. But I'm also experiencing it coming to life in every moment. And there is a joy in wanting to experience that in ways that I never have before, without the resistance, without the conditioning, without the patterning. Don't fear losing your personal identity. You have freedom to fully express your characteristics then in the way that is unique to you, because you are perfectly you. This is perfectly me. This is infinity in its eternal vastness, expressing itself uniquely in this moment as this old man in a chair babbling on. That'll do.